Chapter 4, The Organization of Evil, Part 2, Religious Satanists. The second level of modern satanic worship is primarily distinguishable from the self-styled Satanists or dabblers by the degree to which the groups are organized. Unlike the small and amateurish teenage cliques typified by Ricky Casso's Knights of the Dark Circle, serious religious Satanism is characterized by complex hierarchical structures. The word religious is also crucial. Unlike the dabblers who dipped a toe into the rituals of Satanism, these second-level groups are as committed in their faith as any Orthodox Christian church, and indeed a good deal more determined than many Christian congregations. Non-malefic Satanism. Modern satanic groups divide into two categories, malefic and non-malefic. Malefic refers to the Malleus Maleficarum, the large and exhaustive study of witchcraft, demonology, and sorcery produced in 1486 by two Dominican monks, Jacob Sprenger and Heinrich Kramer. The book is perhaps more widely known today as The Hammer of the Witches, since it became the standard textbook for the bloodthirsty witch-finders of the Inquisition. Malleus Maleficarum, unsurprisingly given the time of its production, was based on the belief that a malevolent devil figure or Satan controlled all cult and pagan worship. Modern non-malefic groups use the phrase to pronounce themselves uninvolved in the pursuit or worship of evil, but how well do they live up to the claim? In October 1988, an occult contact magazine, Ace of Rods, published the following advert. Quote, Orthodox Temple of the Prince, re-established 1955, the only genuine non-malefic Satanists, Benalists in this country. We are looking for just a few prospective members, couples and genuine females, to become an integral part of our temples. Our occult teachings go far beyond the scope of any other group or individuals. Dedication and sincerity is all you need. Progression through ability will lead to the inner circle with certified degrees, close quote. Anyone who sent the required stamped addressed envelope to the box number listed would have been quickly contacted by the order's high priest, Ramon, and supplied with a closely typed 3-page summary of its theology of Benalism. Quote, Orthodox Benalism is a belief in Benel, Satan, as the Son of God, through whom we invoke power from God to bring to a successful conclusion the rituals which we perform. And as the successes of our rituals are so extremely high, we know that the beliefs we have and the rituals we do are more correct than any other belief. We believe in God as the supreme being, but not exactly as he is portrayed in the Old Testament. We believe that he was good and just, the beginning and end of all things, omnipotent and omniscient, a person yet not a person, energy, power, or spirit, the source, unapproachable yet approachable. How can we mere mortals express our concept of it? Close quote. It would be hard from this opening salvo to recognize the Orthodox Temple of the Prince as a satanic group in any traditional sense. But as Ramon's highly colored language develops through the manifesto, the order's theology becomes gradually clear. The group worships a curious trinity. In place of the conventional Christian God, Christ and Virgin Mary, OTP believes in God, Satan, Bethel, and Astaroth, quote, Queen of Heaven, our goddess of fertility and abundance, the one to whom we bake our cakes and pour our wine, close quote. This combination of Catholic Christianity, Satanism, and a pagan or Wiccan goddess is unique in its blend of occult ingredients. Ramon claims that it predates the Old Testament and was one of the sources for the Hebrew scripture writers. Its organized worship, too, is curiously drawn not from traditional Satanism, but from medieval witchcraft. Quote, the Sabbat meetings are near enough every 4 weeks, and there are 6 grand Sabbats a year. We meet in ordinary clothes, but at the rituals we wear our robes, close quote. But if these logistics are highly reminiscent of medieval paganism, the spiritual methodology practiced by OTP initiates were clearly influenced by the sea change Crowley introduced into satanic worship. No vulgar conjuring of an external devil, but rather an intellectual attempt to realize through rituals the deity within each worshiper. Quote, we do not set out to make people wealthy or famous. Our religion is designed through the evolving of our ideals to enrich the lives of our followers. This enrichment in itself may very well lead to individual success through the inner confidence and awareness that this brings. It is our belief that knowledge is the key to all doors. Our people are broad-minded, and we try to release ourselves from many of the inhibitions imposed on us by society. There is no dissent amongst our people, and jealousy is unknown. We are a family whose aim is to build and maintain a better existence for all concerned. Having mentioned some of the things that we do, we must mention the things we do not do, but are often accused of doing. We do not indulge in human sacrifice or vampirism. We do not practice any perverse or anti-Christian rituals, nor do we curse people for not following our beliefs. There are no orgies of sex, drink, or drugs, nor any devious or perverted practices. Close quote. So much for the Orthodox temple of the prince's own version of itself, its beliefs and rituals. The reality is a little different. Ramon is the temple name of a 63-year-old doctor of psychology, Raymond Bogart. He runs the temple from his home on the Lancashire moors. Bogart, a slight, balding figure, claims that he earned his degree in Damascus, Syria in 1962 and has spent much of the intervening period as a child care specialist. In fact, 3 years after graduating and 15 years after setting up his order, Bogart was convicted of unlawful sexual intercourse with an underage girl. He spent 4 years in prison before setting himself up as a psychiatrist working from home. Bogart denies that he is a pedophile and claims that he was wrongly convicted. Child sex, he insists, plays no part in the rituals of the Orthodox Temple of the Prince. Quote, ignorant people think that Satan and the devil are one and the same. They are misled by fanciful and bloodthirsty films, videos, and misreporting. In fact, Satan is simply an energy force. Followers have to be 16 before they can join, and it takes 2 years for them to be accepted. Close quote. A rather different picture of Bogart's brand of Satanism was given to Reverend Ken Logan, a former journalist and now a Church of England vicar who has campaigned vigorously against Satanism. Quote, it was interesting to talk to a family involved in the order and hear their side of the story. This family was very much involved with Ramon's group. Sex on the altar played an integral part in the ceremonies, and at one point Ramon, as high priest, approached the family and said it was time to initiate their daughter. This act of initiation involved having sex with the high priest on the altar. The girl herself was only 13 years old, and her mother pointed out to Ramon that she was underage for sexual intercourse. He apparently told her that the order has its own calendar, and according to this, the girl was really 19. The family didn't, or so they told me, accept this, and the daughter was not initiated. What made me think of their story had a ring of truth, and at the time I didn't know about Ramon's conviction, was that the father was less concerned with his daughter's welfare than in the type of girls he was allowed to initiate into the order. He complained bitterly about Ramon, claiming that the high priest always got the pretty children while he was left to initiate the fat and ugly ones. Close quote. Malefic Satanism. Groups like the Orthodox Temple of the Prince are the exception rather than the rule. Most satanic worship is genuinely malefic, the glorification of strength over weakness, evil over good, Satan over Christ. But within this generalization lie clear distinctions between those groups organized only locally and with limited resources, and those who exist and operate internationally. Nonetheless, in each case, there is clear evidence of rituals conforming to the disclosures of child survivors. The Order of the Nine Angels is an example of a small, carefully controlled satanic group. Anton Long, his real name is David Mayet, describes himself as the order's Magister Templii, effectively its high priest. He acts through a post office box in Shropshire as its point of contact for the would-be initiates and as publisher of its magazine, Fenrir. In July 1987, Long contributed an article to another quasi-satanic magazine, Nox. In it, he set out his views on that most traditional of satanic rituals, human sacrifice. Quote, traditional satanic groups have, and still do, conduct human sacrifice, regarding it not only as a very powerful form of magic, but also as a means of drawing to the earth the darkest of dark powers. Traditionally, sacrifice falls into three types: the voluntary, the involuntary, and the sacrifice resulting from those events which groups or orders may, through magic or otherwise, bring about to alter history. Wars fall into this third category. The second type, the involuntary, is when a victim is chosen by a group or temple. The sacrifice always occurs on the spring equinox. Voluntary sacrifice occurs every 17 years in traditional groups as part of the great ceremony of recalling, an invocation to the dark gods. It should be said that involuntary sacrifice requires the consent of the Grand Master of the temple or order who desires it, and this consent is nowadays only given in special circumstances. The candidate for voluntary sacrifice is always male, an initiate of the temple, and the sacrifice occurring on the summer solstice if possible. After the ceremony, the body is taken and buried in a secluded spot near a circle of stones. Close quote. Long's painstaking analysis of the logistics of human sacrifice was, in fact, simply a précis of the theology of his own group, the Order of the Nine Angels. The Order of Nine Angels. He set out both its concept of Satanism and its liturgies it employed in a privately produced book and in his Fenrir magazine. The later was sold publicly through occult magazines, mail order companies, and high street shops. The book, Long called it the Book of Wired, W-Y-R-D, defines Satanism as practiced by the Order of Nine Angels. Quote, many people in some groups call themselves Satanists today, but for the most part, these people and groups practice and uphold only a few tenets of genuine Satanism, consecrating usually either on the pleasure principle or the power syndrome. True Satanism is the philosophy of the noble and the strong. It is the antithesis of the religion of Yeshua, Christianity, that worship of the decaying fish. To the cowards and followers of the Nazarene belong the meanness of the weak, the rabid utterances about pity, and the vindictiveness of the bully. The Satanist hates his enemy and will kill him without remorse, or the glee of the deformed and the ugly. Above all, Satanism is the enjoyment of this life. The most fundamental principle of Satanism is that man is a god. Most people, however, refuse to see this and continue to grovel. The goal of Satanism is simple: to make the individual godlike. According to tradition, Satanist groups fall into two categories: those open temples or orders organized for secret recruitment and which perform on a regular basis ceremonial rituals such as the Black Mass, and those devoted to individual and highly specialized training at an advanced level. Until quite recently, the lone Magister Templi, working with his high priestess and usually one initiate, was the rule insofar as genuine Satanism was concerned. Only very rarely were open temples formed, and most of these had a short life. However, over the past 20 or 30 years, the pattern has begun to change as temples become established. Although still relatively secret, they are easy to find. The exceptional one might even advertise, close quote. Long was plainly thinking of his own group, the Order of Nine Angels, which advertised through Fenrir. In its pages, widely available to attract new initiates, Long carefully reproduced precise details of the group's rituals and explanations for its more extreme beliefs. Quote, human sacrifice is powerful magic. And magic in here is spelt with a CK. The ritual death of an individual does two things. It releases energy, which can be directed or stored, for example, in a crystal, and it draws down dark forces or entities. Such forces may then be used by directing them toward a specific goal, or they may be allowed to disperse over the earth in a natural way, such dispersal allowing what is sometimes known as the astral shell around the earth. This alteration, by the nature of sacrifice, is disruptive. That is, it tends towards chaos. This is simply another way of saying that sacrifice furthers the work of Satan. Great care is needed in choosing a sacrifice, the object being to dispose of a difficult individual or individuals without arousing undue suspicion. First, choose the sacrifice or sacrifices, those whose removal will actively benefit the Satanist cause. Candidates are zealous, interfering Nazarenes, Christians, those attempting to disrupt in some way established Satanist groups or orders, such as journalists, and political/business individuals whose activities are detrimental to the Satanist spirit, close quote. How seriously are we to take Anton Long and his Order of Nine Angels? Has he ever carried out such sacrifices? Long chooses not to answer any questions about his satanic order or his publication. He ignores all requests for interviews. Callers at the address registered to his post office box are met by adamant denials of anyone by the names of Long and Myatt living there. Yet checks to cover subscriptions miraculously get through. Perhaps as an attempt at self-protection, Long once added a footnote to one of his several detailed accounts of human sacrifice, claiming that it was no longer carried out and was historical interest only. Perhaps. Nonetheless, his published rituals are redolent of death. Some, curiously, also involve symbolic ceremonies remarkably similar to the accounts of child survivors. Quote, the death ritual, temple preparation, black candles on the altar, small silver temple bell, incense of Mars to be used, musk. A small wooden coffin, draped in black, is to be placed before the altar and a handful of graveyard earth placed upon it. Before the ritual proper begins, the mistress of earth, the high priestess, makes a wax figurine in a corner of the temple where only the ordinary priestess is present and in readiness upon the altar. She places this on the womb of the priestess and symbolically moves it down to rest between her thighs, where she anoints it with a musk-based oil, saying, quote, I who deliver you into birth now, name you NN. She states the name of the victim, quote, close quote, and close quote again. Almost immediately, a lengthy ceremony begins during which the devil is both invoked and praised, and the Lord's Prayer turned inside out to refer to Satan. I'm going to read anything that I read here. I ask you, Lord Jesus, to bind any effect on the audience listening this or to myself as I read it, to bind any and all evil powers, principalities, spiritual wickedness, dark forces, and astral projection in all places on all planes of existence from me, anyone who hears this, listens, watches it, in Jesus' name, amen. Our Father, which wert in heaven, hallowed be thy name. In heaven, as it is on earth, give us this day our ecstasy, and deliver us to evil, as well as your temptation. For we are your kingdom for aeons and aeons. The priest says, kill and laugh. All say, kill and laugh. The priest says, kill and laugh and dance to our prince. All say, kill and laugh and dance to our prince. The priest says, he, she is dead. All say, he, she is dead. The priest says, we have killed. All say, we have killed. The priest says, and glory in the death. All say, and glory in the death. The mistress picks up the wax image, holds it up for the congregation to see, who chant, shout, and scream, N is dead by our will destroyed, places it on the graveyard earth and fold the cloth over both. She then places it in the coffin. The priest then has sexual intercourse with the priestess on the altar, while the congregation clap their approval and chant, Ave Satanas! Hail Satan! Repeatedly. After the priest withdraws, the mistress kisses the priestess on the lips briefly, and then the lips of the vagina. She then kisses each member of the congregation. The priest makes the sign of the inverted pentagram over the coffin, saying, quote, he, she died in agony, and we rejoiced. The priest and the congregation laugh. The mistress then goes towards the priest, kneels before him, and takes his penis into her mouth. When he is erect again, she stands to admire her work, saying, I who bring life also take. He begins the orgy of lust in the temple. The mistress takes the coffin to a small grave prepared beforehand. She places the coffin in the earth, covers it with soil. She then visualizes the victim trapped in the coffin and says, you are dead now, killed by our curse. She smiles as she leaves the burial ground. Close quote. The death ritual of the Order of Nine Angels is, so long Mayat claims, purely symbolic. The coffin contains only a wax image of a human being. Yet the details of the rite, the symbolic birth on an altar, the chanting and rejoicing in death, the orgy after the sacrifice, and the burial of the coffin itself could be adult descriptions of the events recorded in the disclosure diaries of the Nottingham child victims. The Order of Nine Angels is, probably, a small localized group, albeit with an active and proselytizing Magister Templi in the shape of /Mayat. As such, it is far from unique. There are dozens of small satanic orders active throughout Britain, and law enforcement officers say the position throughout Europe and the United States is the same. But above these small-time orders, there are at least 4 separate internationally organized satanic movements. Most maintain a shadowy, semi-public existence. Only one is truly an underground organization. Yet all, as we shall see, have, or have had, some recorded involvement with rituals that are either criminal or disturbingly similar to those described by child and adult survivors. International Satanism. The oldest and most widespread of all international satanic groups is the Ordo Templi Orientis, the OTO. The group founded in Freemasonry and subsequently taken over by Aleister Crowley. By spring 1989, it could boast active official lodges across 3 continents, from Australia and Japan, throughout Europe, both East and West, to the United States and Canada. Its membership conceded 1,400, spread throughout 25 countries. Occultic campaigners have attempted to argue that the OTO is not necessarily a satanic order. In strict and theoretical terms, they write. Nowhere in any of the organization's voluminous literature is there any overt reference to traditional Satanism or to devil worship. Nonetheless, the OTO is recognized by law enforcement experts as a de facto satanic church. The reason is simple. It is the legacy of Aleister Crowley. Post-Crowley OTO. On 16 May 1989, Bill Heydrich, Grand Treasurer General of the OTO in America, wrote to a potential recruit setting out the basis of the order's theology. Quote, "The religious aspect of the OTO entirely depends on Liber Al, the Book of the Law, and the absorption of the Gnostic Catholic Church into OTO in the 1920s from the hands of papists." The Book of the Law was the magical scripture dedicated to Crowley by his so-called secret chief, Aiwas, in April 1904. The book contains a series of instructions and aphorisms based on Crowley's belief that he was the new Messiah, ushering in the death of Christianity and the dawn of his own new concept of Satanism, Thelema. The book is clear in its ideological drive. The God figure, in Crowley's case, Satan or the great beast, is within every man or woman, and that he or she has the unfettered right to act in the traditionally amoral way of ancient demonic gods. From 1923, when Crowley became outer head of the order after the death of Theodore Roos, most official OTO documents carry an identical summary of the most important teaching to be found in Liber Al, the Book of the Law. Quote, "The law of the strong, this is our law and the joy of the world." And that is AL, Roman numeral 2:21. "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." That is AL, Roman numeral 1:40. "Every man and every woman is a star." AL, Roman numeral 1, number 3. "There is no God but man." Man has the right to live by his own law, to live in the way that he wills to do, to work as he will, to play as he will, to rest as he will, to die when and how he will. Man has the right to eat what he will, to drink what he will, to dwell where he will, to move as he will on the face of the earth. Man has the right to think what he will, to speak what he will, to write what he will, to draw, paint, carve, etch, mold, build as he will, to dress as he will. Man has the right to love as he will. Take your fill and will of love as ye will, when, where, and with whom you will. That is AL, Roman numeral 1:51. Man has the right to kill those who would thwart these rights. The slaves shall serve. That is AL, Roman numeral 2:58. Love is the law, love under will. AL, Roman numeral 1:57. Close quote. Stripped of its high-flown statements of generalized civil rights, Crowley's instructions to his disciples amounts to a straightforward moral imperative to do exactly as they please and kill anyone who attempts to stop them. Since what Crowley chose to do, and recorded in his diaries and book of rituals, involved ceremonial sex and sacrifice in the name of Satan, it is hard for the modern OTO to disown the label of being a satanic organization. The second plank of the order's theology is interesting for the link it provides between the origins of medieval satanic liturgy and modern satanic organizations. The Gnostic Catholic Church was the logical successor to the Cathar-inspired concept of dualism, the notion that the world was the creation and sphere of activity of the devil, with God being left to rule heaven. We have already seen how this strand of heretical Christianity developed into the embryonic Black Mass, with its rejection and ultimate defiling of Christ. So much then for the theology. But what of the organization which practiced this preaching? Although founded in Germany as an offshoot of Freemasonry, the OTO quickly migrated throughout Europe and North America. The order was first recorded in America in 1905, and the years between then and 1922, when Rus nominated Crowley as his successor, saw the establishment of lodges in California and Vancouver, Canada. Simultaneously, Crowley's meanderings across the world had established groups of disciples in several European countries. The position in Germany was less straightforward, with the three rivals Heinrich Tranker, Eugen Groschke, and Karl Germer, all initially claiming the right to the true path of enlightenment through their own semi-independent lodges. The split was never fully resolved, although Germer's lobbying on behalf of Crowley ultimately succeeded in establishing the Great Beast as the sole head of the order. With the advent of the Second World War, Germer was initially arrested and interned by the Nazis. Hitler's own obsession with the occult led him to suppress all so-called magical organizations that did not involve him directly. Germer was finally deported to the United States in 1941. By that time, Crowley had formally authorized several new European and American lodges, partly to spread the word and partly, since he was able to charge for each new charter, to fund his expensive lifestyle. At the end of the war, there were, in particular, official OTO lodges in Zurich, Switzerland, headed by Joseph Metzger, and California. In the late 1930s, Crowley had ordered his Canadian associate, Wilfred Smith, to set up a linked group in Pasadena, Southern California. The groups in Vancouver and Pasadena were listed as Agape Lodges 1 and 2. By the end of the war, Agape number 1 had all but ceased to operate, and Crowley had concentrated his efforts in California. All initiations took place in or around Pasadena, and there is clear evidence that, despite the limitations placed on travel during wartime, candidates came to California from England and South America. Crowley himself was resident in London, but to ensure the continued expansion of the order, he authorized 2 U.S. Army officers, Grady Lewis McMurtry and Frederick Mellinger, to set up sub-branches in California. McMurtry was installed as the head of the OTO in America. His subsequent work bore spectacular fruit. California became, in the years after the war, the center of all the order's official activity, and as we shall see shortly, some of that activity involved ritual child abuse. Crowley died in 1947. Although he had publicly recognized Karl Germer as his successor and McMurtry as second in line, the OTO appears to have undergone a period of immense instability, with rival factions refusing to recognize each other's credentials. Since Crowley raised much-needed cash by issuing such charters, each apparently bestowing on the possessor the sole right to the position of outer head, the confusion is hardly surprising. Germer managed to hold the lodges together until his death in 1962. Thereafter, the order split into 4 opposing camps. In Switzerland, Metzger claimed the title. In California, McMurtry pronounced himself outer head. Germany, too, had a pretender in Eugen Groschke, one of the survivors of the original 1920s infighting. Groschke, in turn, was on friendly terms with Kenneth Grant, a former student of Crowley's who set up a New Isis Lodge in London in 1950. Grant claimed to have a charter from Crowley issued in 1942, which proclaimed him head of the movement. But Germer expelled Grant in 1951, partly because of Grant's thoroughgoing enthusiasm for the satanic aspects of Crowley's teaching and his almost fundamentalist belief in the contents of the Book of the Law. At stake in all of this was not merely the right to be head of a secretive order few ordinary people ever heard of, but the right to publish Crowley's writings and recorded rituals. He had left them in his will to the OTO. But whose OTO? One reason for the relative scarcity of modern imprints of Crowley's work has been the infighting between his heirs. This lack of continuous publication has an impact on the way we should view children's disclosures of ritual abuse. In those cases where the rituals described closely mirror the rites Crowley claimed either to have invented or performed, we need to ask, could children, even young teenagers, have gotten hold of scarce Crowleyan texts? It took until 1985 to sort out the chaos. The American OTO leader, Grady McMurtry, won a civil court case in 1985, which established him formally as the outer head of the world movement. By that time, the OTO boasted 70 individual official lodges throughout the world and no fewer than 3 US-based computer bulletin boards devoted to promulgating the religion of Thelema. 4 years later, the number of official lodges had grown to 104 in 12 countries, issuing no fewer than 27 regular journals and still communicating via computer bulletin boards. But what do all these lodges believe in? What exactly do their journals contain? Most steer clear of encouraging their followers to break the law, though they promulgate Crowley's own writings, which urge just that. Instead, they are obsessed with mathematical and geometric formula, which claim to define the secret keys of the hidden knowledge of Thelema. Occasionally, though, the mask slips off. Quote, Ordo Templi Orientis, proposed 12th degree study program. Design and perform a ritual of human sacrifice. Cannibalism may be included only as an optional practice, close quote. That suggestion appeared in the Journal of one American Lodge in spring 1989. Surrounding it were other instructions for the study program, which were both evidently serious and utterly implausible. Thus, alongside periods of meditation, the student was instructed to, quote, take hostage a busload of Libyan terrorists, close quote. The effect of the article is to ensure that the human sacrifice instruction, so similar to Crowley's own rituals, can neither be fully believed nor dismissed. If the case against the post-Crowley OTO rested on such slim threads, few law enforcement officers would take it seriously. But unusually for an order which prides itself on careful and secretive organization, in 1969, police in Southern California recorded convincing evidence of the true nature of Crowleyan Satanism. Riverside Sheriff's Department Standard Form 1A was used in 1969 as a crime report record sheet. The document with the serial number 69-207-004 concerned the arrest of 8 adult men and women just after 6:30 p.m. on 26 July that year. 2 deputies from the department, Lewis and Hayes, had been taken to a ranch in the desert just off Highway 95. What had taken them to this remote location was a report that a young boy was being systematically ill-treated by a bizarre occult group, OTO. Their report recorded what they found on arrival at the ranch. Quote, several people were observed in an open-ended metal building which appeared to be furnished as a dormitory-type living and sleeping quarters. This group was engaged in conversation by Sergeant Hayes, while the undersigned, Lewis, advanced towards a large wooden packing crate on the north side of the driveway. The undersigned entered. In essence, observation included the presence of a frail, pale, apparently male child about 6 to 8 years of age, sitting in the corner of the crate. There was a heavy metal chain snugly padlocked about the child's left ankle, with the other end padlocked to a heavy metal plate on the dirt floor. It was hot and suffocating, and the stench of human excrement was nauseating. The child was covered with flies. The undersigned spoke to the child and assured him he would be unlocked and removed as soon as possible. With an expression of fear, the child blurted out that he could not be released, close quote. The description of that incident matches almost exactly the pattern of all subsequent disclosures of satanic abuse involving the confinement of children to cages. In 1969, of course, law enforcement had yet to hear, much less to understand, the term ritual abuse, and so recorded it simply as willful injury to the person or health of a child, close quote. But the case did prompt Riverside County Sheriff Department to look a little more closely at the organization calling itself OTO, which occupied the desert ranch. It did not like what it found. From Detective Bender to then Police Chief McCoy, you'll forgive me, this book is a PDF and it has a portion of the book cut off. So I'm not sure what this says here. Something from Detective Bender to then Police Chief McCoy reports the available testimony of 3 adult women who had joined and subsequently left the lodge. All describe being given LSD and occasionally ether as part of rituals at the ranch, which were led by a Los Angeles school teacher called Georgina Brayton. But one of the women, Candace Thornton Rios, told the detective something which has a distinctly familiar ring. Quote, Mrs. Rios added that when she got pregnant and told Georgiana Brayton about it, Georgiana became very angry and told her she would have to condition herself to the point where she hated the child before it was born. Upon birth, the child was to be turned over to the cult and brought up by the cult, and not by her as an individual, close quote. Candace Rios left the OTO Lodge before her child was born. Riverside police considered, but apparently never followed through, a prosecution of Georgina Brayton for drug violations. The 8 involved in the physical abuse of the boy were all convicted, and there the official police records end. But privately, Californian law enforcement officials claim that this incident, ill-recorded as it was, matched dozens of similar stories told by ex-OTO members. According to one officer based outside Los Angeles, quote, "It was the first of many I heard. Some of the key indicators were there from the start, confining the kid in a cage and effectively torturing him. And whenever similar cases come up, there are always identical allegations made. I honestly think that 1969 incident may have just lifted the curtain on what some, certainly not all, OTO lodges get involved in. The thing is, it's always kind of hard to get evidence," close quote. In fact, the only other recorded case of criminal convictions involving OTO lodges came in September 1989. A woman called Trina L. Church contacted police in Berkeley, California, giving information about local addresses used by the Thelema Lodge as their headquarters. An affidavit sworn in support of a search warrant by Berkeley police officer G. Robles makes interesting reading. Quote, "On August 22, 1989, your affidavit, Robles, was contacted by Trina L. Churchill. Churchill informed me of the existence of a group that are identifying themselves as OTO, which means the Ordo Templi Orientis. Churchill told me that for several years she was a member of this organization, which is involved in the worship of Satan. She told me that she left this organization due to the fact that it has developed into a place where people congregate to use drugs. According to Churchill, they have different types of ceremonies that sometimes originate at the largest and main temple in this area, address given. During some of the ceremonies, they have potluck parties in which they take and share psychedelics and narcotics. Churchill then provided me with literature that talks about procedures, reasons why the church exists. According to Churchill, there are a lot of minors attending these meetings, and this is one of the reasons why she decided to quit this organization, because it was now set to attract juveniles and get them involved in illicit sex and drugs," close quote. In the early hours of 29 September, 17 officers from Berkeley police raided the addresses Churchill had given them. Just as she had warned, the detectives found marijuana, poppies, and opium. They also found, quote, "chemicals for making explosive devices," close quote. Some lodges within the OTO had apparently progressed from drugs, juvenile sex, and torture to concocting small bombs. Which is the real face of the Ordo Templi Orientis? That characterized by the public evidence of the Californian child abuse and Crowley's own endorsement of satanic sex and sacrifice, or the curious mathematical occultism of the official lodge publications? The answer is probably a combination of both. Such is the rivalry and organizational infighting surrounding the order that for each official lodge there is at least another one unofficial OTO group. In the United Kingdom, there are 5 official bodies and several unrecognized branches, each claiming the title OTO. Some law enforcement officers in the United States have come to realize since 1969 that their intelligence efforts need to be directed at understanding the precise drive of each and every lodge. Sadly, that is a lesson British police have yet to learn. If the precise theology of some lodges is equivocal in its recognition of traditional Satanism, the second major international organization dedicated to devil worship has no such qualms. The First Church of Satan. This was formed in San Francisco on 30 April, the traditional pagan festival date of Walpurgisnacht, in 1966 by a former circus artist, animal trainer, and police photographer, Anton Szandor LaVey,